Have a nice day.
Great. Good afternoon. Welcome to those joining us in person in the gallery today. Welcome to all of those joining us on our Zoom platform. I will call to order this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper for November 7th, 2023. It is 1:31 p.m. I will begin by welcoming Councillor Hall as Deputy Mayor for the next 2 months and thanking Councillor Demota for his service as Deputy Mayor over the past 2 months. And I will recognize that today, November 7th, is the day that we respect all service veterans through No Stone Left Alone. Myself and 3 other councillors were able to attend with the entire grade 8 class from the Jasper schools today, and perhaps some grade 9s as well, at the local cemetery where the students placed graves, or pardon me, poppies on the graves or headstones of 143 service veterans who have their last resting place in our local cemetery. So a moving day, and for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to go out to our local cemetery and take that in with the copies on the headstones, I encourage you to do that. We have a long agenda, so I won't take more time now. I will ask council whether there are any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to today's agenda. Councillor Waxer.
Yes, I would like to propose or to move that we remove item 6.1 and reschedule it to a future council meeting after we've had time to consider the item 5.5. I would hope that we could potentially have the two Jasper, the two GTSs to make a joint submission regarding some of that, the funding in question.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. So that is a motion to remove item 6.1 and reschedule that for a future council meeting. Are there any other proposed changes to today's agenda? I understand that there is an intent to also defer one of the delegations, item 5.4, tourism Jasper. They have requested a presentation at a later date.
Yes, Your Worship. Administration received a request from Tourism Jasper just saying that their desired presenter wasn't available today and they would rather be in person than remote. And so they asked if they could do that for another day. So administration is working to reschedule that with.
Thank you for that. Councillor Demota, did I see your hand up?
I was just going to move that we accept the amendments as proposed.
Both of those?
Both of those. 5.4 and 6.1.
All right. For a call question, any other amendments?
Your Worship, just ensuring that we don't lose item 6.1. I wonder if it, so it's not just the removal, it should be referred to, a future council meeting. I want to make sure that we don't miss that sort of thing. In the past, that just gets taken off, but not actually put on somewhere else.
Okay. Thank you for that. So understanding the motion then is to remove item 5.4 and 6.1 from today's agenda and refer both to a future council agenda.
Okay, that works. I was going to change it, just do 5.4, and then once we're in the meeting, then that works. So what the mayor said, you got that? All right, well, it's getting recorded again. Ms. Acorn, hopefully in the future you have this recorded.
Is there any doubt in the mind of any councillor about what I'm going to ask you to vote on? If there is not, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And I would ask therefore for a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended. Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. With that is carried. Agenda item 3, approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes for approval today, beginning with the regular meeting minutes of October 17th, 2023. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If there are none, may I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the October 17, 2023 regular council meeting as presented? Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have before us minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of October 24th, 2023. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, may I have a motion, please, from a councillor that council approve the minutes of the October 24th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And finally, we have the minutes of the organizational meeting of October 24th, 2023. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Councillor Water.
I move that council approve the minutes of the organizational meeting of October 24th.
As presented.
As presented, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, correspondence. We have a letter from Forest Park Hotel. Understanding was that there would be a representative. Is there a representative? There is. Mr. Gupta, please come forward.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors and municipal team for taking this matter in today's meeting. Although the letter is very detailed, drafted by my colleague Naveen. So the matter is about the parking, which is just in front of the forest park. And last year there was no parking signs installed, whereby again Naveen approached, and there was some relaxation given just in front of the parking, in front of the forest park, whereby which could park about 5 cars. So in today's letter, the consideration is to further relax the parking, especially from the Marmot Lodge to the forest park. Having said that, forest park, apart from the regular guest coming in during the winter season, so the no parking is from November till the March, and we're hoping for some relaxation. So during that time, we get a lot of dates, heavy weekends, where guests, domestic guests do come and are looking for the parking. And Forest Park being a big hotel, not only the guests staying in the rooms, but people for conferences, for the restaurant, or the spa would come to that same hotel looking for the parking. So we were hoping to get some relaxation and have that parking. Although we've come to know that due to the snow removal, that area is also, that area is concerned. But we're happy to collaborate with the municipal and smoothly operating the entire parking, so that when there is snow removal, we can assist in ensuring that all cars are removed from the parking and the snow removal and still happen.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Are there any questions of councillors? Councillor Demota?
Maybe not from Mr. Gupta. Thank you very much for addressing us today. This through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Given. Is this before council because this is a service, this would be considered a service change in the community, or? I'm curious if this can't be handled administratively.
Your worship, for Councillor Demota, I believe the property is essentially appealing administration's decision. So for many years, there was no control for parking in this area. I believe the property and adjacent users would park along the roadway. There was no prohibition on parking there. Administration over the last couple of years identified this as an operational concern for a couple of reasons. First, that's an area where the lighting along the roadway changes and where the roadway narrows down to two-lane undivided sort of standard. And so it is a cause of concern for safety. We have people parking and walking across that roadway, and as you can imagine, and we've all experienced it when there's a big event at the property, that those areas do get used. Particularly during the winter months, administration has a concern. Additionally, in terms of the efficiency of snow removal, having to work around parked vehicles does impact the efficiency of being able to go up and down the road as needed. For those reasons, administration moved forward with implementing no parking. And as the property acknowledges in their correspondence, administration did meet with them in advance of this change or through this change and moderated the approach. First, we went to a seasonal only approach rather than a year-round approach, recognizing that the area of greatest concern is during the dark, slippery winter months, and where we have to remove snow. And we also came to that accommodation of saying, okay, well, the area that's directly in front of the property allows more room for people to essentially pull off to the side. And the property said that they would maintain that spot, those areas. So administration, I think, worked with the property to moderate our approach. And I think what we're finding is that in advance of this winter season, the property is asking for additional consideration or different consideration. I think it's fair to say that from an operational perspective, administration is most comfortable with the approach that's there now, but it does limit the amount of parking that's available for all of the other users, whether they're hotel property users or adjacent residents.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Good to have.
Thank you for that. Other comments or questions from councillors? Councillor Moon.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the new addition to the Forest Park, I noticed that there's a parking bulb there and there's no parking. And I'm wondering why that is. Why, you go from one lane to two lanes, and in front of the new addition, there seems to be an area that has been closed off for use by the Forest Park for parking. Was that imposed by the municipality for fire lane, or was that done by the Forest Park for other reasons?
I'll have to get the answer for that from the dean, but that small fire lane. But apart from that, fire lane, adjacent to the fire lane, there's no parking, which I'm assuming is again the municipality, which has imposed no parking there, which is from the moment till the new building of the Forest Park as well.
No, I understand, but I'm referring specifically to the parking, what looks like a parking bulb or bus parking that's in front of the new addition. It looks like it was built to be meant for parking, but it says no parking or fire lane, and that's why I'm asking if that was imposed by the municipality or if it was done by Forest Park to have the fire lane. And I don't know, I can't remember if it's actually marked as a fire lane.
Your Worship, if I may, for Councillor Malik, I agree that the administration doesn't have that specific at hand. It may have been a requirement that was imposed by the standards of development of the new build. And I can't remember clearly if the signage there is municipal signage. I have a suspicion that it's not, which would tell me that it actually may be the property that has decided they don't want to have parking in that space. But I would need to confirm that. I don't have that answer here today. I can tell you that any limitations on parking at that pullout area, were not a part of the scope of the change that it has happened over the last couple of years on the narrower part of the way that really is, I think, the focus of the letter.
So, in looking at the letter and the specific of the ask for an opportunity to perhaps work with municipality, where should there be a snow event, that signage is put out at that time, and it looks like the Forest Park would be willing to do that until snow removal could be done. Is that a possibility that could be perhaps used as a pilot project for a 2-month period, say in December and January?
Your worship, for Councillor Malik, it's certainly something that administration can review. This request and that offer wasn't made last year. So it is new information, and certainly administration could, if council wishes, administration could talk with the property to see if we could come to an arrangement about that. Some things that come immediately to mind would be whether our operations team might have a need to do snow removal or ice control over the hours when people are in their roofs and the vehicles are on the road already. So, the simplest thing for administration is just that there's nobody parked there ever, and we can always clean whenever we need. And that also doesn't necessarily address the concerns that are raised in the letter. So we'd be happy to discuss this with the property if council feels that it's appropriate for administration to do so. Again, from a operational effectiveness or efficiency standpoint, the simplest thing is during the winter months, if there's no vehicles there, and then our operations team has full ability whenever needed to just whip down there and do snow removal and ice control without having to consider whether there has been enough notice given for people who may be parking the road. But again, if council wants administration to look at this issue, follow up on the idea raised in the letter, certainly you can give us that direction to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Malik and Mr. Gibbon. Anything else from council? Councillor Hall, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'm just wondering how much more space you said you wanted to increase over, was it 5 stalls last year? I think I heard. How much more space are you looking for?
Thank you. So we did go get 5 extra spaces as the max. So at this point in time, our ask is the possibility of the Forest Park side of the parking, so that the concern is people crossing the road, and that becomes a safety concern, which definitely is understandable. So if just at the Forest Park side, if that can be relaxed, that can have another 10-15 cars, which is a big use for the guests as well, and because it's an entry point as well, it just becomes a very running, there is no parking issue there. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Anything else? On that very last point, in particular, the safety issue, if my memory serves me correctly, there is not a crosswalk in that area. Is there from the hotel side to the other side, or where are you looking for the additional part?
There is not.
Thank you. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? I might suggest Mr. Gibbon was on to something. I think that we could accept the correspondence as information and direct administration to continue discussions with the proponent to see whether another solution could be found, perhaps on a trial basis for the coming months. If there was a councillor ready to meet.
And to come back at a future committee of the whole.
Councillor Waxer?
I'd make that motion. That the council receive the correspondence for information and direct administration to work with the hotel to come up to see if there are relaxations that may be possible.
And to report back.
And to report back at a future committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Wexler. Is there any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So for clarity then, we'll accept the presentation for information, and we've asked our administration to work with you to see if there is something that can be achieved that meets your purposes, but also allows a degree of administrative efficiency from the municipality's perspective and ensures safety for users. So you can expect some outreach from our administration, and they will then and report to council as to where you've been able to take the matter. So appreciate your presentation. Thank you. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you for the presentation. And Your Worship, I didn't want to bring this up during the debate because it was a segue, but I think before we move on to the next item, I think it's highlighted the fact that we have an entryway at the end of town, which is going to have future development with the RCMP building. And we are inadequate in lighting, inadequate in width of the highway. And I would like to highlight that we need to get this on the radar into a capital program to ensure that the entryway at the east end of town is upgraded to not only accommodate the situation we're talking about, but also the addition of additional traffic due to the RCMP building and potentially future accommodation that could happen at that end of town.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mellon, and I acknowledge that you brought that to our attention previously as well. Mr. Gibbon.
Your Worship, just as a bit of a budget preview, you will see in the capital recommendations, a recommendation to move forward with a transportation master plan update. We've seen a number of issues at the council table related to transportation in smaller areas, this being a larger one. And that's the type of issue that would be addressed in that update. So previously heard, and you'll be seeing some recommendations about that type of work in the 2024 budget recommendations.
Thank you for that. Again, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for on the councillors. Thank you.
All right, that takes us to agenda item 5, delegations, which will unfold strikingly similarly to correspondence. We will begin with item 5.1, Community Futures West Yellowhead, and I think Ms. Robbins is here for that presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nancy Robbins, Community Futures West Yellowhead. Community Futures West Yellowhead is a nonprofit organization funded by the Government of Canada. We offer the Community Futures program to the municipality of Jasper, towns of Hinton and Edson, Yellowhead County, and Grand Cache and its surrounding cooperatives and enterprises in the MD of Greenview. Our program for small businesses and entrepreneurs are designed to help people start, expand, franchise, and sell their businesses. We offer business coaching and training programs, networking events, flexible business loans, and they are available for both existing businesses and startups. Our core business programming focuses mainly on the main 4 areas of business coaching, business training, business financing, and community economic development. We have found in growing years that our core funding has become more challenging to make stretch to offer our services. Community Futures program has not received an increase in funding from the Government of Canada in approximately 17 years. We have become more creative in accessing other funding sources to offer a supplementary program to our growing entrepreneurs in the West Yellowhead. In the past year, we have had corporate funding, Nonprofits have partnered with us on various projects, and in the past budget year, we also requested funds from our municipalities, which we are doing again this year. We've asked each of our 5 partnering municipalities for $10,000 each. Our plans for these funds have been given to you in the presentation. Of course, every year we offer our Lemonade Day. Lemonade Day is a fun program that we offer free to the children that participate, where they learn to run their own business. And many of you have participated in that, and you know how much fun it can be. We are also offering 2 years, in the next 2 years, of leadership with Yellowhead. This is a very successful program that we ran from 2009 to 2012. And we are seeing a growing need in our region for skilled labor development in more professional settings, and also that we feel it's time to bring back the program. Also, we have Small Business Week activities. We'd like to ramp up the previous activities we've done in Small Business Week and to offer more opportunities to our businesses to celebrate. We want to offer more entrepreneurship events for newcomers, women, LGBTQ populations, and Indigenous peoples. This is something we've become quite successful at, especially in Jasper. We worked last week with Welcoming Week and worked with some newcomers on their business plans. And we also want to make our business retention and expansion activities more formal. We would like to start looking at ways that we can collect more data in our communities and use that data to grow our entrepreneurship in the West Yellowhead. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for that presentation. Councillors, questions, comments?
I'm Hannah.
Councillor Waxer.
I just wanted to say that I was excited to see the proposed reintroduction of the Leadership West Yellowhead program. I'm aware of many people who took in that program, and I was involved in mentorship with some people. I think it's very important, and I can see some young people coming up that are interested and enthusiastic about being active in community life. And I think this provides wonderful skills and opportunities for meeting people in the region. And so I just wanted to express my enthusiasm for that.
Thank you, and I'll send you a mentor application.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had made note here, yes, that the reintroduction of the Leadership with West Yellowhead program is great to have that back. We have individuals in the room who attended that program back when it was in 2007 to 2010, and some 57 people were able to be mentored through that program. I'm happy to see this request is a one-time request for the operating of Community Futures, as opposed to numerous requests throughout the year. And just to be clear for everyone, that this is a request for the Community Future operating year, which will bridge our year 24, which is our budget year. And this is actually to fund Community Futures for your budget year, which is April 1 to March 31st, 2025. Yeah.
Councillor DeMoto.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Robbins, for being here today. Because I sit on this board, I'm going to be a little biased. And, I feel that this is a really good new approach coming to council right before budget time. And we used to have one-off requests all the time. So having this lumped in, I think is a very healthy process. And I think it's underfunded. And I say that because we do have some business development in our community through the chamber and Tourism Jasper. That's a form of it, but we don't have an official economic development. department in our community. And I think, I see from history that Jasper's really benefited from community futures and has a large, maybe not the bulk of success stories for people that have requested services from community futures. So I think that $5,000 or $10,000 is a small ask, and I would like to see in the future all the communities that are involved an increase towards some of the physical participation towards this. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Island, and thank you, Ms. Robbins, for coming today. I read through, there's a lot of exciting things happening. I'm also worried about small business. That's a hard struggle to have. I'm wondering about, what's it called, SEBA, the government loan for small business for pandemic. Are you dealing with any of that with your clients? I think I read somewhere that only 20% of business have paid that back at this point in time in the country. Is that a stat you're hearing too?
Well, we have the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, which we did 109 loans in the region. We are entering a very trying time for small businesses. As you are fully aware, the deadline is January 18th to be eligible for that forgivable amount. We've only seen about a 20% repayment rate to date. So, and we can assume that for our portfolio, we can times that by 3 in the entire region for the SEBA loan, which is done through the mainstream banks. That in combination with the challenges of 2023 with regards to disasters, we are on the brink of a recession. I think it's going to be a very trying time for our small businesses, and especially if we don't get any snow. Some snow would be nice. So yes, it is a very difficult time. It's a lot of what our coaching services right now are focused on. A lot of our financing is focusing on that. And we're just trying to help everybody get to the finish line of January 18th.
Another thing I was a bit struck with was the fact that you haven't had an increase from the government in 17 years of funding. And I think this is not just a municipality of Jasper thing, but it's becoming, really relying on just property taxes to pay bills, and that's one of your, for concerns. And nonprofits are having a hard time, and I'm excited about that leadership with Yellowhead. I'm not really familiar with it, but it seems to be like a leader, not necessarily business, but leaders in the community, which I think is great. But yeah, so thank you very much for coming today.
If I might pick up on that, my concern as well is the indication that Community Futures West Yellowhead has not received an increase in core funding for 17 years, which means effectively you've received diminished funding in real terms. Once upon a time, you did offer a leadership course, and it was fantastic. And it must have been funded from core funding because it wasn't funded by us. So now it can't be funded, and effectively, I can't attribute blame to anyone other than the federal government, but this is downloading on municipalities, and yet you've indicated that of your action items regionally, municipal property taxes are number 2, and in Jasper they're number 3. And yet, if we fund you, it's only going to come from property taxes. And so I am challenged to see how the municipality can accept downvoting from the federal government. I would be eager to work with you to lobby our local MP and government generally to increase funding, because this should be part of the core service, and it should be funded by your funding agreement with the federal government. And so I'm challenged by that, and just recognizing, as Councillor Demote indicated, he's sits on the board implies I sit on council and I'm protective of our taxpayers. And it's just a different perspective, but I recognize a need, but I'm challenged to commit myself to being the scapegoat for the federal government. And on the question of other municipalities, I know that we have contributed in the past, and I think it was on the basis of equality with other municipal partners in this. Has there been any look at whether contributions from municipal partners might be proportional based either on assessment value or population or something other than straight equality?
As a taxpayer, I agree with you as well. I understand the struggle. And I appreciate the efforts to assist. The board works very hard with our MP on that issue, and I will bring that back to them to reach out to you. It's really their job to advocate on our behalf. The second part of your question is, I will also bring that back to the board because actually we've never talked about that. On our board of directors, every municipality is equal. So I will bring back that feedback and I will share it with them.
I would appreciate that. I mean, we are in regional efforts, say for housing evergreens, which is based on assessment, equalized assessments. So there are other ways to approach it. So I would like to know whether that could be a possibility. Otherwise, thank you very much for the report. Very informative, and I really am encouraged that you'll go back to the leadership West Yellowhead model if we can help you find core funding to that. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. This request comes a week before our consideration of community group funding. And the recommendation in our notes here is to receive this for information. But if we receive it for information, will administration be presenting this as well next Tuesday to us for consideration?
Your Worship, for Councillor Melnick, I think my suggestion would be that Council has a couple of options here, and it is receive for information, which would mean thank you. It was interesting to hear this, and we're choosing not to take any further action. If Council wishes to see this at budget and consider it in the context of the overall budget in a couple weeks' time, I think the appropriate action would be to receive for information and refer the request to the 2024 budget discussions. Administration was working with the community organizations. We're certainly trying to bring things together for Council and the organizations in a little bit more of a predictable manner. We've identified, I think, a day for community group presentations, and just with the number that we received this year and other commitments that the organizations have, not everybody's able to come on the same day. So we're having them here as sort of part one of community group presentations. And if you wish to consider funding a community group, my suggestion would be that you should refer this to the budget discussions.
Councillor DeMota.
Well, if you would have asked me first, I had a motion for this. I'm just kidding, I'm having fun here. I move that Council receive the presentation for information and defer the financial request from Community Features West Yellowhead to be part of the 2024 budget discussions for consideration.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor DeMota. Any debate on the motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So thank you, Mr. Robbins. We will refer this to our budget discussions, which begin next week in earnest, although they were already underway.
Yes, well, and thank you. And I should have started with that. I was not available next week, and the staff were very kind to me today. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. Moving to agenda item 5.2, the next delegation, Jasper Employment and Education Center with respect to the Rural Renewal Initiative. and Heidi Bellman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heidi Ballou, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council people. Before my presentation starts, I'm going to just introduce myself. I am the new Executive Director of the Jasper Employment and Education Center. I've been here 9 weeks. I moved here September 4th. I started work September 5th. And in my first few weeks, I noticed a huge influx of people in our office. And the one question is, how can we be part of the rural renewal program? So between temporary foreign workers and employers in Jasper, this is a hot ticket item. How can we be part of this program? So I am doing the Coles notes of my 9 weeks as the new executive director to tell you about the rural renewal program and why it needs your support. So is it going to be up there or here? For you, it's here, but then it's on the screen. Oh, it's right there. I didn't put a screen. I said it there. Okay, thank you. I don't see it. Okay, here we go. Here's a little bit. So a little overview of the rural renewal program. Rural renewal in Jasper. We were applied September 2022. We put together a steering committee, a workplace inclusion charter, and we opened it up to the community, and we selected 12 employers and 30 slots. And 30 slots means for temporary foreign workers to apply and be approved. Part of the approval process is that they get a letter of endorsement. Since that time, there's been a high demand for this program. Little explanation of what it is. This is an Alberta government program. It's run through the rural renewal stream. So Alberta government has a whole slate of visas of how to get new immigrants into Alberta. And so the intent of this program is to support and attract newcomers to rural Alberta and to meet the rural community's economic needs. So a few stats about it. There's 32 communities designated in Alberta at this time, and only 840 spots open for 2023. Jasper Employment Center is the only nonprofit in Alberta running the rural renewal program. So I'm going for a big ask because I'm very new. I'm asking for 60,000. So I try to align this with your strategic plan and your strategic priorities for Jasper and the municipality. The rural renewal programs creates the opportunity for newcomers, temporary foreign workers to integrate into the community. It provides support and information and services that enable TFWs to expedite their PR process, understand Canadian workplace culture and their rights, and thus be helping them feel more included in the local community. Again, one of your strategic actions is recognize the fundamental importance of our tourism economy. This is exactly for that. The rural renewal program is to look at workforce development and say, how can we support that? So how can we get people to do the work in different places across Alberta? And so it's to attract and retain newcomers. Again, another one of your strategic actions, is it expertise, innovation, creativity? Well, when you're working with TFWs, we do have a TFW program at the Jasper Employment Program. And so the big thing is for TFWs is they want to be part of Canada. If you noticed last week, the Canadian government put forth new targets for immigration in Canada. We're going to hit the $500,000 mark. I think it'll go higher in 2024. This is one of the tools to do that. And so this is a community tool, which is different than most employment programs or visa programs. The community gets to decide which employer and which temporary foreign worker will be approved for an expedited visa to become a permanent resident in Alberta and in Canada. This is a summary of my points pertaining to why this aligns with your strategic plan. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other funding at Jasper Employment. We have a budget of $500,000. Most of our funding comes for adult education, as well as we have employment contracts to support people to become employed in Jasper. We have a new program. It is funded in a Pan-West manner from Employment, Social and Development Canada. It is for temporary foreign workers. It's the first of the kind that I've ever seen in my career. Temporary foreign workers is a highly overlooked population that we use to build our economy. So right now, my colleague Asta, she's the leader of our temporary foreign worker program. We are funded through Calgary Catholic Immigration Services on a 18-month contract that ends March 2024. And this program, honestly, they line up during out the door. It is our most subscribed program, and it is very necessary in the community. This program helps people who are temporary foreign workers navigate all the different visas that are out there, support them in going to English class, talking about their rights and responsibilities in Canada workplace culture. And I can honestly say most temporary foreign workers here are here for one thing. They want to stay in Canada. So during Newcomer Week, which was last week, we did a session with 12 temporary foreign workers, and they told us very clearly why they want to stay in Canada and why they want to stay in Jasper. And so for a lot of people who come here, this is, they get recruited in other countries, they end up in Jasper. And for a lot of them, they would like to use their past education from back home. They would like to stay here and provide a future. Many of them have families back home that they're hoping to sponsor in the future. You can only do that if you become a permanent resident. And so it's loud and clear that we have a population of temporary foreign workers. I'm going to guess at 600. I think our agency is serving half of them, but a very interesting group to work with. So another thing, Jasper Employment, we really are working on the labor market needs. We have a good understanding of what's happening. We support, we supply a website and storefront services to support employers to fill their job vacancies. We are open 9 to 5 every day to make this happen. And expanding our funding for this group of Jasper would really support the temporary foreign workers who will be our future Canadian citizens. The level of engagement on this program is high. I can't believe how many people come from across Canada, show up in Jasper and say, I want to be part of rural renewal. Our employers are lobbying us heavily for 2024 because they also want to be part of the program. So what's happening with the Alberta government? Well, they are finally meeting with us. They're meeting with all the municipalities. So the bunch of 32 have been vocal, and so they've set up regular meetings. At the last meeting and the first meeting that I've been to, they talked about the growing interest in this program and that they would increase the numbers of opportunities in Alberta. The new thing that it will probably roll out next year is that they're going to have a visa specifically for the tourism industry, which is good news. I believe we need to be at the table with the Alberta government so we can shape the future of these types of programs, because they're not always tailored specifically for the unique needs, such as Jasper with the tourism economy. So we need to be at the table because there's many varieties of different workforce needs. We are not an agricultural community, so we have to have a specific tool that works for Jasper. Our stats, we've been working at this since we opened up in January. We've endorsed 12 employers. We opened up for 30 candidates and we endorsed 16. And then this last week, we opened up to 2 more people. The process is long and tedious for the people who are nominated. So they get in the queue if their employer agrees. And right now, our other 14 to 16 people are still waiting. There's a huge backlog. The province has to put more resources into expediting these endorsed candidates. In 2024, we would love to see a larger program. There's a demand in this community from employers and temporary foreign workers to open up more spots so that people can
have an expedited process into the permanent residency program in Canada. So the conclusion, I know I'm asking for a lot, but as the Jasper Employment and Education Center, we are struggling to make this program happen. We are not funded for it, and we're doing it off the side of our desks. So there's a lot of learning to be happening. November 24th, we have an open house for employers. We will, 29th, I've been corrected. So November 29th, and I'd love to tell employers a little bit different news. We are at the point where I'm deciding whether I'm going to charge employers, cut the program, or look at other funding options, which at this point, I really do think the Alberta government should fund it, but they're not forthcoming on this. So that's why I'm here today.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Fallon. Questions, observations, Councillor Deputy Mayor Fallon?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you for your presentation. My question is, so there's 32 communities involved in this. How are they funding this program? If we're the only nonprofit running it, how are they funding it?
So every other municipality, I've talked to Hinton, I've talked to Edson, and I've been at the meetings. They either put it under their economic development officer. Some is in Hinton, it's under their FCSS program. So there's a variety of ways they are doing this. So it's usually someone who's working for the municipality.
Councillor Boxer?
I was unclear as I was reading your presentation, if the funding request is only for the rural renewal program, or if it also goes to support services that to augment the program that's done by Catholic Immigration Services. So it was a bit unclear.
Okay. Yes, so the funding is requesting to run the rural renewal program. So, and it would be a complement to the funding from Calgary Catholic Immigration Services.
Thank you.
Councillor DeMotor?
This takes me back to 2009 when our council was meeting with Banff. And a representative from Wastewater came to help us in our bid to the provincial government on convincing them that we need better funding tools to assist tourism-based economies. And this would be something in the champion building, type of support for us at a higher level. And as you are strapped, much of our budget is equally as strapped, if not even more, because we are operating in a tourism-based economy, and we have very slim ways to some of the money specifically for things like this. And we've gone off on initiatives to get paid parking in our community so that a lot of the burden isn't put directly on property owners in the community, whether you're residential or a commercial property owner. And we share your struggle. And for other reasons too, that the mayor brought up earlier on local taxation, this one's a tough one. And I'm interested in having more discussion with my fellow council members on this, because I do believe it's important, but how are we going to find the money? And it is a big ask, but I appreciate that it's here, because it's another gap that we can see that would help our economic activity in the community. Thank you. And as they say, I ask Asra.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Melvin?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. I have a number of questions. Out of the 840 spots, are they distributed equally among the 32 communities, or are we able to proportionately get more if we have more applicants?
So what it seems at this point, and you got to remember, I'm 9 weeks here, so I'm a quick study. But for what I gleaned from the last meeting and when I talked to him, it's the first people in the queue will get the spots. There is a bit of legwork you do with employers and with the potential candidates, so they have to meet some requirements. So some of our requirements is they have to provide housing in Jasper. If you don't have housing, then what's the point of endorsing your candidate? The candidates have to meet multiple criteria. So in Hinton, for example, and I did call Hinton the other day to see how they did it. They put 100 people through. And they're getting many more people endorsed because they did it quickly and swiftly. I would say the person that I talked to regretted that means of doing it that way because she didn't have enough parameters, or her committee and however they managed this didn't have enough parameters. We did this much slower. We did set up a committee with parameters for the employers and the candidate to follow. And some are directly affected by what the Alberta government requires. So first to the queue, it opens up at the beginning of January. So do I agree with that method? Probably not. If you want to play, that's how it's going to go down.
And I do recall, council or Heidi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we did have a request earlier from the Employment Center to endorse this initiative and to for us to be able to participate as one of the communities. I think that was presented to council, if I remember right, last year. And I think the Chamber of Commerce may have also endorsed it so that the Employment Center would become our center for this particular program. And the last question I guess I have is, you had alluded to the fact that if funding isn't available for this, and people who are participating, the 32 businesses or 30 businesses right now, at this point, are they paying into the program, or are they just participating as this is an opportunity to try to get temporary workers? They do a lot of the legwork, but is there like a fee or a participation charge that they also contribute to help support the program?
It's $100 for each employer. For each applicant.
For each applicant?
Yeah.
Oh.
Councillor Dwyer?
Well, I just wanted to add that I found it very astute that you referred to our strategic planning in this, and I think it's something that I think is important because we spend a lot of time on that, and we didn't take that lightly, and I feel that we put more and more work towards that every term, and I like the fact that people will go and do some research and see how that works within what council wants to do for and with the communities. But just wanted to make that note. Thank you.
I might just speak briefly to Councillor Melnick's observation, although I do have a couple of questions for you. But we did, in fact, at the council table, approve a motion to become engaged in the rural renewal stream sometime in the last year. It was presented to us sort of as an offer. Would you like to get engaged and become one of the designated communities? We thought that was a good idea. But now that we've been designated, aren't we told by the province, oh, by the way, that comes with a cost and it comes out of your pocket. Not exactly the terms on which we agreed to enter in the first place, but that's where we're at now. There are currently, as you indicated, 32 designated communities and 840 spots. That was for 2023.
Yes.
Has the province given any indication whether additional communities will be designated in 2024 and whether there will be additional spots?
The designation for communities is still open, so anybody could apply. So I have observed that this is a program that is, I would say, for the province, is doing a bit of an experiment in rural communities and then finding the feedback a year later. And so communities of all sorts that I've been at the meetings where they're saying, hey, this would work better, that would work better. This is how it's stressing out our community. We don't have housing. We should have done it this way. We should have done it that way. I do hope that the province opens up to some new funding. And we'll probably see that after their next budget. But what I've seen thus far, it is a bit of a game of who's first in the queue. So when I'm thinking about moving ahead with this is obviously a tool in the tool belt for the community and for the Jasper Employment Center and for TFWs and employers to say, we can pick the right people. This is definitely a win for anybody who gets endorsed as a candidate, because expedited permanent residency is the dream for many people. And, I do think it'll, we do have a skill set that is missing in Jasper. A lot of people moved away during COVID, and so they are selecting candidates that might meet their needs for certain positions in the hospitality industry. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. As a nonprofit, what is the source of your primary funding?
We have 5 contacts. So we have 2 contracts. We have a person with disability where we help people with diverse abilities, support with supported employment, counseling, training. We have a transition to employment services. We intake people who go on to EI or have their hours reduced, and we can give them support for retraining, help with finding a new job. We have a temporary foreign worker program that's just funded as a partnership with Catholic Immigration Services. And we get money for adult education from the Community Learning Network. And that funds English language classes and literacy classes for Jasper.
And those sources of funding, are they?
They're all provincial, and except for temporary foreign workers, that's Employment and Social Development Canada.
Thank you for that. I wonder if I might ask, and maybe Director Reed would be better able to answer, but is there any crossover with settlement services? Could they be engaged in any way, and what's the source of that funding?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the council. So settlement services is federally funded, and we do, of course, work with many of the same people that Heidi and her team are working with. However, there is no sort of direct or indirect crossover for support of the program, certainly not monetarily. The navigation of the system, our staff would certainly do their best with. That's really all I can say right now.
Can I add to that? So unfortunately with Immigration Canada contracts, temporary foreign workers are not allowed to be in the service offerings because our Immigration and Refugee Canada services are only for permanent residents. So this is a group of people who miss out. And so I've honestly been working in immigration and workforce development in 20 years in Edmonton. This is the first time I've ever seen a temporary foreign worker program funded, which was a great initiative by Catholic Immigration Services in Calgary. So unfortunately, settlement services, great job. I love the programs in this community, but it's there is not support for temporary foreign workers under the federal government.
All right, thank you for that. Again, confirming that it's wonderful that other orders of government come up with wonderful initiatives and then expect municipalities to fund them. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and in the ensuing discussion. The temporary foreign workers that are involved in this program, once they are approved by the Rural Renewal Program, are they then subject to be employed only by the employer that sponsored them? Or are they totally portable? Can they move around the province? In other words, if we fund someone to be able to be accepted here, 6 months later, can they leave? Or are they still need to stay with that employer until they become, I think you use the term, not landed immigrant, but
Permanent resident.
permanent resident.
So yes, they have to stay with that employer. And I'll ask my colleague Astra, she's the keeper of all the information, so how long can
The students want to live in Jasper, but not in a particular specific employment.
So they do sign that they stay in Jasper for another 2 years. Again, the onus is on the employer. If they get, once you're a permanent resident in Canada, you have all the rights to move and change. So the onus is on the employer is that, this is deemed quite the reward. And, if it's a good employer and they like where they work, they'll stay because this is a great opportunity for people. And they're looking at it. Most employers are looking at areas that they can't easily find the right people and the right fit. So they are choosing accordingly. Of course, with visas, there's all sorts of other minutia of why they might not fit. You haven't been here long enough. You don't have the right language. Yes, I mean, there's tons of things like that, but the employer definitely are picking people that they see would fit the best in their organization.
Councillor Mellon.
And if I may, my last question would be, this was the first indication of an ask for a contribution. I would anticipate that this will probably become an annual ask unless there's other financing that becomes available from the provincial government to support the program.
Well, I do think, and I'm quite the advocate, so I would, I haven't had time yet, but I would definitely go back to the 32 communities saying, what are we doing? But, in the given short timeline, January comes soon. And so what I announce exactly to the employers in Jasper of what we're going to do is where I'm at right now. So this is a timeline thing. I do think it should be funded differently. Personally, I think this is offloading from the provincial government and the federal government. But here we stand, and I'm asking, because of the timing of the issue, it's about queuing up people for kind of first dibs in January, so that hopefully by March, there will be people who don't have to leave Jasper, don't have to leave Canada, they can stay and work longer.
Thank you.
Thank you all. If there are no further questions, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion?
Go ahead.
We got our hands at the same time, I think.
Councillor Waxer.
That council received the presentation from the Jasper Employment and Education Center for information and to refer the discussion to our budget deliberations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waxer. There is clarity on the motion. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So again, you're a week in advance of our budget deliberations. We'll just carry this forward and continue our deliberations as we look at our budget and what we can and cannot do in that budget. Appreciate the sense of urgency.
Thank you so much.
Agenda item 5.3, our next delegation, Mr. Jeff Wilson and Mr. Ron Marks. Men's Shed. Welcome.
Does it work? It does. Good. Technology, it's a wonderful thing. First of all, my name is Jeff Wilson, and Robin Marks and I are here to basically introduce ourselves. And we represent the Men's Shed, Men's Shed, no doubt. Men's Shed is an association that was started in Australia in the early 90s, middle 90s. as a way of combating health issues, primarily among senior men. The prime components were depression and loneliness among men who had stopped working, had lost their direction, and that was the primary focus in Australia. In Australia, it has grown immensely, and I think worldwide, well, after the starting in the mid-90s, it expanded to Ireland. And in Ireland, they expanded their participation from senior men, which was the original focus, to all men, because a lot of the health issues are shared by men across the age spectrum, not just among senior men. And I think worldwide, there are 900 sheds that are operating. And in Canada, there are 76 sheds that are currently registered, 11 that are operating in Alberta at this time. It was in December of 2022 that Shed Canada was recognized by the federal government as a not-for-profit association. What sheds do is they focus on community participation, community involvement, inclusion, and mentoring, as well as philanthropic projects. But it's a way of men talking to each other, and the phrase was coined in Australia as "men do not speak face to face, they speak shoulder to shoulder." And that's why it's a way of disseminating information, community information, all sorts of, I think about our community and the seniors that are in our community, and the amount of information is staggering. And it can be passed on to all sorts of individuals helping as well. So, and that's all I have to say, and I'll turn the mic over to Robin.
Thank you. We will, of course, at some point be asking for money. Because we've only been doing this for 2 weeks, and so we're just in the starting phase. I don't really know how much money we'll ask for, but the other thing that we'll be asking for is space. That is kind of the key to this whole thing, is finding space. And just to give you an idea, I have already actually talked to a representative from your operation, the municipality, and of course was told that there was no space and so on and so forth, which didn't surprise me. I also went out to Canada, and I've been to a couple of different businessmen who would have space. Everywhere I go, I've got great reaction. Everybody thinks this is a super idea and needs to go forward. Anyway, so at the moment I'm waiting to hear from a couple of, well, one business in particular and another one at the back, but we might have space. Most of the existing sheds, in fact, all the ones I'm aware of, operate from free space, either donated by businesses or parts of other operating businesses, and like Camrose, for instance, their shed operates out of the museum. They have space, and what the shed does in order to pay for that space is they do whatever maintenance is required at the museum, and that seems to work. Anyway, so there's those kinds of operations that happen. Speaking of our museum, I talked to Herb Robinson a couple of days ago. I was trying to work into a project behind the museum, and they are apparently in the process now of trying to develop something there. So that's kind of ongoing. So that basically is all I have to say, is that, you know, this is an ongoing project, seems to be well supported so far, from just supports the idea. I had one businessman that said he would, he couldn't give us space, but he would certainly put in a cash contribution if we decided we needed to build space. I've yet to follow that one up as to how much and what's it going to cost us, but that's about it. I think. No. Any questions?
Well, thank you for the presentation. I'm anticipating that there might be questions. Councillors? I can start if you want to think. I am intrigued. I really do appreciate the presentation and appreciated some extracurricular reading that I did with respect to men's shed, and it is an exciting prospect. That space is a consideration, and I wonder what a couple of matters. Would you anticipate that the space would be available during all hours or only some hours? Because that could make a real difference in what might be available.
Well, probably all hours that people are awake. You know, that one of the suggestions was, well, maybe we approach the high school and see if we can use their craft facilities. And I didn't really think about it that much, other than the fact that one of the things with this men's shed is it's supposed to be designed partially as a drop-in center. The one shed that I'm familiar with is in Squamish, and they have it almost like a club where Thursdays is people get together and have coffee, but people show up at all other times, and they have all kinds. They've got a shed that they've got 1,200 square feet, which is about as big as all this space in here, and full of equipment that they've had donated. So they make all kinds of stuff, but it's huge space. But yeah, I think the idea is that if you see, Richard, you could sign up for this. Say you want to go on Monday morning and have a couple of 2x4s and make something or whatever. So you can go, the key, and you go and you do what you want to do, and somebody else wants to go at 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. And so basically, any time that you would expect to find people awake, so pretty much any time.
All right, well, thank you for that.
Long-winded answer to a simple question. Sorry.
No, I appreciate it, and I was happy to hear that you have considered schools already, whether you've made contact or not, because public funds support shops in schools that are used minimally, I would suspect,
Right.
and yet they're already there and they're already paid for by public dollars. So it might be an opportunity, but I understand that the fact that as a drop-in center, that is maybe not the ideal scenario. But I appreciate the answer. Councillor Demona, were you waiting for a question?
Not really questions, but comments. That's usually my style, but I just want to congratulate you guys. And I was going to say, I want to be invited to the first frat party. But you know, this sounds a lot like initiatives like the Sonic Watch, and I would like to probably support. I can't speak on behalf of them or anything like that, but you know, Knights of Columbus, things like that. This is just kind of like a little bit more of an open design, and I really appreciate that. And I think that if you go and knock on those doors, that you might, you know, eventually get some crossover. I would encourage it, you know, talking to representatives of those, you know, fraternities in Jasper. So I like this, and I know that if once it gets going, I'll probably be part of it down the road. So yeah, good for you guys.
So you're suggesting the Sonic Lodge for funding?
Yeah, I believe that there's exactly. I've seen in the community in the past that they've made some donations to other organizations, and from my understanding is that they are not for profit as well. So, and sometimes there's some extra funding available. So I just suggest. Good, and I think that could promote some crossover too.
Well, just sitting here today, I put 3 names on my funding list, so Community Futures. And G. And so, yeah, that's good. I've got like 9 prospective,
And there's somebody for pursuit behind you too.
Might
as well canvas the whole. So.
Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I don't know about the rest of you, but I would love to see Mayor Ireland cutting a couple 2x4s on a Monday morning. I love this idea. There's no doubt benefits for men's health, men's mental health. This is 2 weeks in the making. Like, is that what I heard? And I did some reading over the weekend too with men's sheds, 7 steps to starting a men's shed. And the first one is build a team. And I'm seeing that your guys are doing that. It looks like there's a $1,000 grant you can get as well through the organization. Do you anticipate potentially becoming a nonprofit or going that route?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very early in the stages. Again, I support this. I think it's phenomenal. Anytime community members come to us with really wonderful ideas, it's great. You might be a really good candidate for our community economic development fund, which will come up in the spring. But yeah, congratulations. This is really great.
Just to fill in a little bit, we started out with just 8 people. And I just talked to a bunch of friends and great idea. And I kind of stopped there because everybody I talked to thought it was a great idea. And I thought, well, the one thing I don't want to do is wind up with 50 people who all think it's a great idea. And then we can't do anything because we don't have a space. So I kind of think, well, half a dozen people is enough to get to where we are now. And we will, when you talk about nonprofit, we will attempt to become part of the senior society. And yeah.
Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and thank you for the presentation. And I did have a chance to read a document over the weekend that was sent around by one of our municipal managers, Lisa Riddell, regarding a study done by the University of Alberta, which was very informative about the various positive attributes to this program. And I'm hoping that as we get through the next 6 months with our renovation project at the Activity Center, and as we maybe stabilize some things, yourself, the organization becoming formally a not-for-profit, that we could find a location where even if it's a temporary location to begin with, to be able to start this organization. That might be a recommendation to go if there's a place that can at least be used in the short term, with the understanding that that you would be looking for a more permanent location in the long term. Right.
Yeah.
Councillor Roxer.
I just wanted to speak in favor and for my appreciation for this idea. And you sparked a memory for me of a quote by Margaret Mead, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So I think with your enthusiasm and that, I'm sure that eventually there'll be a way to make this happen.
Good. Thank you.
Before I invite the councillor to make the motion, the recommended motion is that we receive the presentation for information, as we've done in the last couple of cases. We've added to that to refer it to our 2024 budget discussions. It's difficult to do when there's not a quantified ask, and so I'm wondering whether you know when you might be in a position to quantify your ask, and I appreciate that could be difficult.
Well, I suppose I mean, the easier answer to that would be, well, why don't we just ask you for $25,000 and then you're stuck with it, right? But, you know, we're trying hard to get space, free space. And then if it's in commercial space, I would be going to the landlord and saying, okay, well, how about, you know, and maybe you know, that one of the spaces I'm looking at would be that the person renting it would donate it. But I would also go to their landlord and say, okay, this guy's kicking this space in, and can you do something to cut their rent, whatever. You know, we know that we have funding source to start with $1,000. And then there's another one for $10,000 as a project. You know, so, I mean, probably foolish not to ask for money up front, but I think if we can get money from other sources without coming to you, then probably you'd be happy. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, this thing is moving quite quickly, so I don't know what the sense.
Also, we were under the impression that next meeting, you have a full slate of people coming, asking for money, and that maybe this was not a good time for us to come cap in hand, that maybe it's better in the springtime. So, and that would give us more time to get our house in order and all that other stuff. So we could come to you and say, okay, we now have this entity. Do you want to help participate in funding?
Well, I appreciate that, and I would certainly be supportive of the motion to receive the presentation as information and invite you as a delegation to reattend before us, the committee of the whole, when you find it appropriate to do so. And I assure you that if I show up on a Monday morning to cut the 2x4s, I will expect you, Mr. Marks, to be there to ensure that I don't cut my hand off.
Yes, that's right. And hearing protection, please. Don't throw hoops.
Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion?
I don't have a motion, but I just wanted to say that that was a smart idea of Councillor Hall for the economic development. I think it was a really good idea. And then I just remembered I was supposed to help you move branches that you actually cut a while ago, and I forgot that.
All right, there is some concern whether our freewheeling dialogue session is over and we might move to a motion if everybody is satisfied that they've got the questions out that they need answered. I would look to council for a motion. Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much. Before I make the motion, maybe Mr. Marks, you can add to your list, Director Reed for that Community Economic Development Fund information from the manager Riddell. I will happily make the motion that council receive the presentation for information. Are you adding anything else to it?
Invite them to go back again, present to committee of the whole when you're ready.
With an invitation to come back to present at a committee of the whole when you're ready.
Thank you.
I see no.
Thank you, Council.
Well, if you wait, we'll
Yeah,
vote on the
voting,
motion.
I don't have to yet. Yeah.
All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So again, thank you, gentlemen, and just do come back when you're ready. Yep, as you say, your ducks in a row. And we will welcome you again. And thank you for the initiative.
Associations in BC, associations in Alberta here, so.
All right, agenda item 5.4 has been removed from today's agenda and will be rescheduled on an agenda for future council meeting, which takes us to agenda item 5.5. Delegation is the crisis scheme society, Mr. Van Teegum and Ms. Dawson, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. My name is Greg Mantigam. I'm a volunteer advocate with the Jasper Crisis Team and soon to be called the Crisis Team Jasper Society. The purpose of this presentation is still the Jasper Crisis Team. The purpose of this presentation today is to request a pause on Council's final decision to reallocate the 2022 Crisis Team funds to the Jasper Community Team Society, as was at the previous meeting. I'd like to start off just by saying that we do have the utmost respect for the people and the services of the JCTS, and we work with them and collaborate with them on a regular basis. But we were surprised by their request for the funding. The Jasper Crisis Team Fund was established with a clear mission to provide immediate support to community residents and visitors facing overwhelming, traumatic, or crisis-related situations. Initially, the crisis team worked alongside the Victim Services Unit to fill the crisis response gap that was created by the Jasper BSU's mandate to assist only victims of crime. Crisis team funds allow the crisis team to initiate immediate action to support those in need 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. The Jasper Crisis Team model allows for flexibility in supporting these individuals in need. We are able to be very flexible in order to fill any gaps or crises as they arise, day or night. The crisis team receives referrals from costs, Seton Healthcare, Jasper Emergency Services, the municipality of Jasper, and local businesses, etc. We currently operate with one contracted coordinator, one advocate, and 6 board members, with services available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are capable of providing emergency financial assistance such as hotel rooms, food or transportation after a traumatic event. We also provide one-on-one, that doesn't necessarily mean face-to-face, confidential and non-judgmental support. We truly appreciate your consideration in this matter, and we look forward to the opportunity to provide you with any more information or documentation that you may require to assist in your decision. Today, I have with me the president of Jasper Crisis Team, Kelly Dawson. As well, we were, I think, planning to have Lisa Dara, but that didn't happen. You got me and Kelly. And we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And if we cannot answer those questions, we'd be more than happy to provide you with some follow-up on those questions. So again, thank you very much for your consideration.
Well, thank you, Mr. Van Team, and thank you both for your attendance. We're happy to have you here. It would have been nice, perhaps, if Ms. Derrick could join us also, but we're absolutely happy to have you. And you started with the indication that what you were seeking was a pause. And I think that Council has already signaled that that's exactly our approach. So the item that had previously been on our agenda 6.1 to deal with the previous request, which you say caught you by surprise, has already been deferred. And as the council representative on the Jasper Community Team Society, thank you, by the way, for suggesting you're to change your name. We'll have 2 JCTSs. You can call one the crisis team and the other the community team. In any event, I am aware of a small flurry of emails circulating earlier today, and I think there is every reason that we could expect that the 2 groups can resolve this and come back to us probably with a joint recommendation on those funds. And so with the other matter off our agenda, I'm hopeful that we've opened that opportunity for you, and the discussions will continue, and we would look forward to hopefully both groups confirming to us a joint approach to the use of those funds. I very much appreciate that you've engaged at this stage, and perhaps a bit unfortunate that it wasn't sooner, but it's before we got to an intractable position, so very happy to to take the necessary pause that you've requested.
Thank you very much. Your worship the council, and we will do everything we can to assist and to collaborate. Thank you.
Before you go, there might be a motion. Councillor Waxer.
With that, I make the motion that council receive the presentation for information.
Thank you for that. And whether it's stated in the motion or not, we invite you to continue your collaborative discussions with the Community Team Society and let us know how those resolve. We can bring forward another motion at another time. So I will call the question if council is ready. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you for that. We are about to move on to agenda item 6, new business. There might be an opportunity. I think we have exhausted all of the members of the public who were to appear before us today. I do see representatives of the chamber here. I'm assuming that they are just doing a watching brief and are here in any event. So I think it might be appropriate to call a short recess now, a comfort break for all, and reconvene at 3:15.
That's better.
Welcome back. It is 3:16. I will call us back into session. We are at agenda item 6, new business. Agenda item 6.1 has been removed from today's agenda to be rescheduled to a future council meeting agenda, which takes us to agenda item 6.2, community and economic development fund applications. There is nothing specific in our agenda with respect to this. This is a matter that comes before council on the basis of a recommendation from the committee of the whole to approve 2 particular grants into the community and economic development. Any councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I actually want to make a motion today to approve the following grants from the Community Economic Development Fund. $2,500 to the Jasper Local Food Society and $2,500 to Jasper Artist Guild. It was the funding they requested. I believe the 1665 was just divided by 3 and we only funded 2. So I would like to fund both these groups to their full ask.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Hall. Is there any debate on that motion?
You sure both for 2,500?
Yep, I looked credit for that.
Councillors appear to be doing a little bit of light reading, so I will give an opportunity, but if we're ready for the question, I will call the question. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? There is 1 opposed. That is carried.
For clarification, I wasn't ready for that jump, and it's not that I needed more time, but I had a little bit of a sway towards one over the other, but I'm glad that you did that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Agenda item 6.3, Director's Report from the Director of Protective and Legislative Services, Deputy Anna.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. It has been a time since I've been here with a director's report. The last one was from early in the summer, I believe. And so it's kind of hard to summarize what's been happening over such a long period, but we are getting back on track with our director report schedule. And so a couple highlights from the report. Major projects on emergency management. So our emergency advisory committee, which is the mayor and 2 councillors, as well as our emergency management agency, which is our staff group, are ongoing. And these meetings are proving to be quite useful to keep us on track with taking stock of where we are at with our program, our plans, our initiatives, our training, and some good outcomes coming from those meetings. We have numerous or a few capital projects for 2023, which are progressing well. We are making it our mission to try to complete as many as we can before year end, so we don't end up in a situation where we are having a number of carry forwards. However, contractor availability is of course impacting our ability to get some of those projects done, which leads me directly to the next item, which is the repairs on the host tower. And I'm happy to report that our staff have been back in the office at the bottom of the host tower for approximately 2 months. And we had some repairs that were successful, but we continue to monitor the situation. We're not entirely convinced that the entire issue is addressed, and pursuing further leak detection contractors to that effect. But the last month or so since the last repair, things are looking good. So it's a bit of a matter of a waiting game to see if more water comes in. And again, contractor availability and the sort of skill level required for those technical repairs is, we had to get a contractor from the city who was quite strong in one specific area, which is hard to get in Jasper. We've launched some new programs. We had a busy summer season in Bylaw, as well as some staffing changes, which are highlighted in the next section. But with the hiring of our new protective services coordinator, we are busy developing some standard operating procedures and sort of documenting a lot of practices in the Bylaw area. And some of those duties that were previously performed by officers are now taken on by our admin staff, which gives us a good level of continuity and stability into the future. And the fire department, of course, has been busy all summer responding to a number of highway rescues. And one of the highlights is also that we had the fire department facilitated an interagency highway rescue meeting last week. So that's bringing together all the agencies that participate in those, and it's a good opportunity to troubleshoot and try to improve processes, and overall a good initiative. We've recently had to say goodbye to one of our first community peace officers, Lara Wells. Lara worked for the municipality for approximately 10 years altogether between Director Reed's area and my area. So Lara took a job with a rural Alberta community, so continuing with her career in law enforcement, and we're thankful for everything she's brought forward to our department and helping us through an important transition over the last 2 years. We're sad to see her go, but it's a great step for her in her career development, so we're happy to have been a part of that and being able to support it. As I mentioned, we have our new protective services coordinator starting in May. Katie Poirier was a successful candidate, and Katie is a volunteer firefighter, but she also has a strong professional background as an administrator, and implementing the bylaw administrative side of things has been a fun project to work on between the protective services coordinator, the licensing enforcement manager, and myself, coming together and putting together that new list of duties, which were existing in fire, but are new for bylaw. So that's been a good addition to our team. As well as this summer, we've recruited Alexis Conte is our new municipal compliance officer, and she is also proving to be a strong asset for our team. Some very good public relations skills, some experience with related positions in her past employment experience, and overall a strong asset for our team. We've launched the winter storage lots, or the winter storage service in S-Block parking. So they are not storage lots. That is the program that council approved. So turning some of those stalls in the S-Block parking lot to winter storage for residents. We have approximately 12, and I want to say requests are still coming in for a 6-month term winter storage in that parking lot. And the big stalls are in high demand. People have large units they would like to store, and we've had to turn a few away because we just don't have
that many large stalls. The small stalls, however, are still available. And we are balancing the requests with, if we do have commercial requests coming in, trying to prioritize them. But we did end up in a situation where we were already committed to a certain number of residents. So trying to balance those demands has been something we've been dealing with. And as you're aware, paid parking ended on October 31st. I'm sort of crossing into my colleague, Mr. Greathead's area, but the signage was taken down in a very prompt fashion this year. And so that has wrapped up, and we will be bringing a report to council, a year-end report. And then from a communications and engagement perspective, I had to highlight our legislative area. Ms. Acorn has been particularly busy handling an amount of correspondence that I can't keep up with being CC'd, so let alone dealing with the actual replies and sending people to the right places and identifying the right process. So collaborating with CAO Gibbon and myself. And so kudos to Emma for handling a large amount of correspondence on a bunch of different matters lately, and providing some great service and a good professional image of the municipality in those dealings. So thanks, Emma. And that's it. I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Udon. Questions, comments, observations from councillors? Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. My question is about capital projects, specifically the large trucks. I'm seeing there the fire trucks. Is that, and I know this has been asked before, and I could probably look it up. First of all, what are they worth? What is one of those trucks worth?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Ireland, through to Deputy Mayor Hall. It depends on the truck. The most current one that I have in mind is coming to you as part of our capital request for 2024, 2025. What I'm outlining here is that the build times for those trucks has expanded quite significantly. So we're looking at 3 or 4 years from the time of order to the time of delivery. And so the aerial is probably the most expensive one and is the last one on our schedule to replace. So those big trucks need to be replaced every 20 years as per National Fire Protection Association standards. We're looking at $2.2 million for the aerial. And I can say that you can expect that 1.1 in each year in 2024 and 2025 is what's coming forward in our capital presentation.
Okay, so my question is, and I'm quite sure this has been asked before, what if we can't afford it? What do we do if we don't have the money and can't buy a $2.5 million fire truck?
So that is a file that Chief Conte and I have looked into and is a very current question for a lot of other communities. We've discussed previously that NFPA standards are a guideline or a standard. Are they legislation is a question, and it's not a question as in it's a guideline, it's not legislation. But if you don't meet NFPA standards, there are quite a few consequences, including insurance ratings in the community. So people's house insurance could go up because our trucks are not up to standard. If there was an equipment breakdown while we respond, we could be liable for not keeping up the equipment and not be covered by our insurance. Firefighter safety is also another pretty important aspect in terms of the technology that was put on trucks 20 years ago is not what it is today. And so we're exposing ourselves to risk in that sense. And so there are a variety of factors that are possible to quantify, but that have repercussions that are pretty far reaching. So even though it's a standard, not a legislative piece, it's highly recommended that we do replace them, I guess. And I see Mr. Gibbon would like to chime in.
But I just wanted to add, Mr. This is the type of thing that we're seeing a budget and good discussion for the budget. Administration plans for these types of things. And so certainly there, those line of contribution to reserves that, this council and previous councils have seen many times, certainly in the fire area, would be us putting money away over many years to be able to help facilitate some of the costs. So the direct impact on property taxes is not exactly $1 million in each year. We have been saving up for these types of things. and some portion of property taxes. So it's not quite as direct an impact as you might think, but it certainly does reduce the availability of funds for other things. We also have some grants, I believe, that can apply, that can be applied to this, which means that it isn't as direct an impact on the tax base, but it does mean that those are grants that we can't apply to other things that could be done, and so you can tell it's budget time. Everybody's mind is on budget, and so you'll see in the budget document that capital projects have many different funding sources. Hopefully, with the new reserves policy, you'll be able to see the fleet reserve use a little bit more clearly, as well as utilization of different grants for a single project. So we cobble together funding sources from as many different areas as we can, sometimes from those savings accounts, so that we minimize the impact on property taxpayers in any one particular year.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Director Don. Mostly about, because I guess my other question was going to be, is the expiration date of a fire truck based on time or mileage? But I appreciate the answer with technology changes, because I can absolutely understand that technology changes. Because I was always concerned that if it was just mileage, I don't think I could be told otherwise. We don't use those trucks probably as much as a city would or somewhere else. But if it's technology based, I do understand that does make sense.
Thank you for that, Councillor Demoda. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Another argument for tools for tourism-based communities, and I'm just reflecting back, and I believe I asked this question a while ago. We do have statistics and a formula that we develop in our service agreement with Parks Canada, and a lot of our emergency service that goes through our fire department is outside of town. And when we're talking about replacement costs, and not only for the people that benefited the day, but I appreciate that we're putting some funding away for future funding for when those vehicles do expire. But I'm wondering how much or to what depth that funding consideration for those vehicles is taken into consideration with the service agreement with Parks Canada, because that is part of providing the services, the wear and tear on our infrastructure, let alone having a building and all the staff like that. So I'm wondering if that could be another layer to add to the discussion, and are they underfunding the service that our visitors are getting outside of the community? I guess that's a general question for you, sir.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Demoda, we are actually quite active on the file of our negotiations with Parks Canada for the emergency services agreement, is what we refer it as, and essentially there's a fiscal discussion going on, of course, and we've demonstrated through our calls for service and where we spend our time and which equipment is deployed, and we've done quite a bit of work in documenting that and making the business case to our counterparts, essentially. And the funding model that we are trying to return to would be a percentage of our operating budget. So percentage of our net operating budget, which includes transfers to reserves, which therefore represents a operating and capital funding model. So there are a few funding models out there. You typically between urbans and counties is what you see in the rest of the province. For us, we're the urban and the national park is the county, essentially, the rural. And you can imagine that a cost per call for service, for example, is highly unpredictable, both from our end and from the Parks Canada end. It is not really a desirable funding model. Hard to administer, unpredictable, but certainly the operating and capital contribution is what I think there's general consensus that that's the way to do it for that consistency in funding, but also to include the fact that our trucks do get deployed in the national park, but also the fire hall itself is part of our assets that we manage. That is a piece that is required to provide the service, right? So it's a complex file, but in a nutshell, most of our service calls in the park are highway calls. So that means our rescue trucks are highly used in that area. The aerial, for example, services the buildings. So it's for structural protection, specifically multi-level buildings such as hotels, but then also large buildings, including, the ice field center, for example, is something that the aerial might have to drive all the way down there, which imagine putting gas in the aerial to drive down to the ice field center is, there's a whole layer of costs and equipment and time that is associated with our response in the park. And we are actively working on that file to try to generate more revenue and offset our operating ask, essentially.
That essentially answers all the questions that I've had in my head. And I understood most of that, but I think it's important for other people in the community to hear that. So if some of that was repetitive, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Roger.
A question I've been asked is what happens to the fire trucks that wouldn't have lots of mileage on it and are replaced by us? Where do they go?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Waxer. They don't go to other municipalities, is what I can say, because they are subject to the same requirements as we are. So they can go to private industry sometimes. So for example, the Jasper Park Lodge has its own fire truck, and they are not subject to the same requirements as we are in terms of being a town or a community. I know some of our trucks have gone to other countries before, so some trucks were driven down to Mexico and down south. But so the value of those trucks, unfortunately, is not very high. Once they're aged out, we can sell them, but for not compared to the purchase price, it's very minimal.
Thank you.
On the same topic, specific to the elevated stream capacity or the aerial truck. Perhaps question that you can't answer today, we could have for budget discussions if that's one of the trucks that needs to be replaced. Is the need for that elevated stream capacity a legislative need, or again, a practical insurance-based sort of need? And I'm just curious about that. We, in the long-range scenario, if there is legislative requirement for particular trucks based on heights of buildings, as we look at potentially densification of the community, which might include taller buildings, will we be subjected to different legislative requirements for our firefighting capacity?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I will not venture into too much detail on that question, which is probably better left to Chief Conte. But certainly the multi-story buildings drive the need for the aerial. We do have engine 1 and engine 2, which are pumper trucks, which can action structural fires on most residential properties. But Jasper currently has quite a few multi-story buildings. So you can think of from apartment buildings to hotels and commercial buildings downtown. There's already a pretty good segment of established large buildings that do require an aerial. I do know that part of the specs for the new aerial is to get the ladder to have a bit more reach, be a bit longer, to accommodate what Chief Conte tells me is what is actually required for our current structure. So we're catching up with the standards required to action fires on those large multi-story buildings. I do not know specifically at which stage of building height, I would assume, that requirement might change, and that's a bit of a theoretical question, but it does raise the importance of the fire department's inputs into development matters. There is an impact there, and the aerial would be, in terms of building height, the aerial would be where that appears.
Thank you for that. Any other questions of Director Nudon regarding the report? If not, I would invite a motion. Councillor Waxer.
that council receive the report from the Protective and Legislative Services Director for information.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Seeing no indication of debate, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed, that is carried. Thank you again for that report.
Your worship, if I may,
Me.
I didn't mean to extend it, but just being part of the No Stones Left Alone today and having a little bit of time in the cemetery, I do want to commend the tidiness and how quickly the book has been updated as well. And people are right on it. And I just think I was very proud to be there today.
Thank you for that. Agenda item 6.4, Betkowski Scholarship Transfer. Mr. Don, are you speaking to that, or who might be speaking to that? It's before us. Mr. Gibbon?
Your worship, this is a recommendation again coming from committee, as with the Community Economic Development Fund applications. That's why there's not an attachment to the report. But the recommendation from the committee was that council approve the transfer of the Betkowski Scholarship Fund to the Jasper Healthcare Foundation. Just recognizing that over the years, this fund has been infrequently, if ever, used. And the reason that the municipality was the holder of this was because there wasn't an appropriate external body. The Healthcare Foundation is an appropriate body, has a similar aims, and we're able to identify the original guiding principles, terms of reference for the fund, and working with the foundation administration to identify that they're an appropriate holder of these funds. And so this would essentially move these off the municipality books and allocate them to that external body that can more appropriately deal with them.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. Apologize for that. I overlooked how this got here. Any questions by or from councillors, or is there a councillor prepared to make the motion, which is the recommendation from committee? Councillor Amora?
I could do that just for the sake of people watching. I could read it out loud. I move that council approve the transfer of the Betkowski Scholarship Fund to the Jasper Healthcare Foundation, subject to the completion of a memorandum of understanding outlining the commitment to administer the scholarships in accordance with the original funder's intention.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Demona, is there any debate? Councillor Mellon.
One thing that wasn't mentioned in the motion, but just for the benefit of the public, the funds that we're talking about are over $18,000. We don't have an exact dollar amount, but just so people have in context the dollar amounts that we're talking about transferring to the Healthcare Foundation.
Thank you for that, Councillor Melnick. If there is nothing further, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And with that, I thank Mrs. Janice Marks, who's in the back of the gallery there, for your diligence and persistence in pursuing this matter over a number of years to finally get this transfer into the Healthcare Foundation, where the fund can be reactivated. It has sat idle for far too long. So I really appreciate your efforts in getting this to this stage where council can finally deal with it once and for all and turn it to good hands. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Agenda item 6.5, Wastewater Treatment Facilities Borrowing Bylaw 2023. Before us for first and second, then potentially third reading if we agree to consider third reading at this meeting. Mr. Gibbon, you wish to speak to this one?
Your worship, these may seem familiar to council. That's because they have been here before. After having previously received, and I'll speak to both bylaws because really it's much the same for both. After having previously received both parks approval on circulation, 3 readings from council and then administration, including paperwork and forwarding into the province, using our typical format for bylaws, which we've been using for many years. Province said, oh, wait a minute, we would like to see this additional line added. And so that was a new requirement to us. Again, had never been raised with us from the province before. And so the province requested that we bring them back to council for the addition of that single line in each bylaw. Administration has highlighted that line in yellow in each bylaw. So the changes that you can see there are really have no impact on the materiality, the amount of borrowing, the source of funding for it, or any of those other items. The province really just wanted to see this line in each item, identifying that the municipality would in fact collect enough money to pay the debt. And that has been our practice. That line hasn't previously needed to appear in a bylaw, but they are the regulator, and so we are bringing them back. The other change that you'll see in the bylaws is that we are actually, with these bylaws, repealing the previous bylaw that was there. So you'll see in terms of the number convention, there's bylaw 255A is the one that's in front of you, and it is replacing bylaw 255. So I hope that that's clear. You previously approved, for example, bylaw 255, bylaw 255A replaces 255, and the only change is to say that it's replacing the old bylaw, and to say that the municipality will in fact collect the money required to pay the debt. And so that's the same in both bylaws. There is one additional nuance that administration caught after the agenda had been published, and it's with respect to the first of the 2 bylaws, the wastewater treatment facilities borrowing bylaw. In that bylaw, the item says that the municipality will levy appropriate municipal taxes to fund the debenture. As council knows, we don't levy municipal taxes to fund utility debentures. They're paid for through utility fees. And so administration's recommendation would be that when you work your way through item 6.5, that you give first reading to the bylaw to get it onto the table, that you, subject to that passing, that there be a motion to replace the words municipal taxes with utility fees, and then to move on to voting for second reading as amended, and then to go on to consider having third reading. With respect to, again, as I said, both bylaws are exactly the same form, other than this one change. So parks notification, administration believes that that has been received. There's no intrusion into federal jurisdiction. And both bylaws, the amounts and all other items were appropriately advertised in their previous forms. So we believe we meet all the legislative requirements. So really a housekeeping amendment that causes a whole bunch of motions at a council meeting today. Your worship, that's the introduction, and I and the rest of the team are happy to answer any questions you may have on process or with the specifics.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. I suggest I'm perfectly clear. Given the nature of the request from the province for these additional words and recognizing the change that can be made to substitute utilities for taxes in one, it encouraged me to look at some other provisions in the legislation. And I appreciate your comments that with respect to section 251 sub 3 of the MGA, the advertising has been accomplished through the advertising of substantially the same bylaw previously, so we are still on side. The other thing that came to my attention was the provision of section 252(1), which requires that council is unable to pass a bylaw, the borrowing bylaw, if the borrowing would cause the municipality to exceed its debt limit. So I'm just going to ask for confirmation from Director Melnichuk that this borrowing will not cause the municipality to exceed its debt limit.
Thank you for that question. I can confirm that it does not exceed our borrowing limit at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there, or are there any other questions of administration from councillors, or is there a councillor prepared to make a motion for first reading of bylaw 255A? Councillor Melnick, if you have your hand.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification on the first reading, that would be a first reading without an amendment. And then the second, before we do the second reading, would be a motion to amend section 5.2 to replace the words municipal taxes to
Utility fees.
utility fees.
Right.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I move that council give first reading to bylaw 255A, the wastewater treatment facilities borrowing bylaw 2023.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Deputy Mayor Hall, is there any debate on that motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. We have read bylaw 255A for the first time. Councillor Melnick.
Your Worship, I believe this is the time it's appropriate that I would like to make an amendment to bylaw 255A, specifically section 5.2, to replace the words municipal taxes with utility fees to be consistent with how we pay for our utilities in the municipality.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick, before I call the question, I will turn to administration, and Mr. Given, that is the nature of the amendment that you sought.
Yes, sir, sure.
Thank you for that. Councillor Waxer.
So this is a small question, but do you levy utility fees, or do we have to get rid of that, the word levy? I wasn't sure. It was levy taxes or?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Waxer, yes, we would use the same word, levy taxes or levy utility fees.
Thank you so much.
Is there any other debate on the motion to amend the bylaw prior to second reading? Not, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And it would then be appropriate for a motion to give second reading to bylaw 255A as amended. Councillor Waxer.
That council give second reading to bylaw number 255A, the wastewater treatment facilities forwarding bylaw 2023 as amended.
Thank you for that motion. Is there any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There is none opposed. That is carried. We are unable to proceed with third reading without giving ourselves permission to do so at one and the same meeting. We do have, courtesy of initiative from our own staff, certification already from Parks Canada, which is required before we can give third reading in any event, but we have that, and so we can or choose not to give ourselves permission to do third reading at this meeting. So I would invite, if there's a councillor interested, a motion that council agree to consider third reading of bylaw 255A as amended at this meeting. Councillor Miller.
I can read.
You're making that motion?
I can make that motion. The council agree to consider third reading of bylaw 255A as amended, the wastewater treatment facilities borrowing bylaw 2023 as park certification was obtained.
Thank you for that. Motion, Councillor Melnick, is there a debate? Call the question, all those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And now that we've given ourselves permission to consider third reading at this meeting, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion that council give third reading to bylaw 255A, the wastewater treatment facilities borrowing bylaw 2023 as amended? Deputy Mayor Paul, thank you very much. I see no hands indicating debate. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Three readings. One fell swoop. That takes us to agenda item 6.6, the Jasper Recreation Complex Renovation Phase 2 borrowing bylaw. Again, first and second readings and third reading proposed if council so permits itself. Mr. Gibbon, you've already spoken to it, so we have the gist. I would just again, for the record, ask Director Melanchuk to confirm that this borrowing will not cause the municipality of Jasper to exceed its debt limit.
Yes, I can confirm that again.
Thank you for that. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion to give first reading to bylaw number 256A, the Jasper Recreation Complex Renovation Phase 2, borrowing bylaw 2023? Councillor Demoda, you make that motion?
I shall move.
Thank you for that. Seeing no indication of debate, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Similarly, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion that council give second reading to bylaw 256A, the Jasper Recreation Complex Renovation Phase 2 borrowing bylaw 2023? Councillor Waxer, thank you very much. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion that council agree to consider third reading of bylaw 256A of the Jasper Recreation Complex Renovation Phase 2 borrowing bylaw 2023 at this meeting? Deputy Mayor Hall is prepared to so move. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And finally, then, having received Parks Canada certification, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion that council give third reading to bylaw 256A, the Jasper Recreation Complex Renovation Phase 2 borrowing the bylaw 2023? Councillor North.
No, I don't. I think it's Ralph's gonna say. I think Wendy just wanted to hear Deputy Mayor again. Last
Councillor Malek, you still move.
I shall move.
I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And thank you to administration for the effective way in dealing with this curve thrown at us from the province.
Seeing as I'm sitting as close to Councillor Wilson's chair, if I was him, he probably would have done all four in one swoop. So I was going to attempt that, but I understand why we had to break them up.
We are at agenda item 7, notices of motion, of which there are none. So we can move to agenda item 8, councillors' reports. And do we have councillors' reports? Any councillor? Councillor Waxer.
I, along with everyone else in the room, attended the Indigenous training and blanket exercise on Friday, and it was a very worthwhile day and a wonderful opportunity to connect with the Indigenous people from this area, and it was meaningful, and wonderful conversation. So I appreciate the time and effort that went into the planning and everyone's time.
Thank you for that. Councillor Laxer, other reports? I will report that on October 26th, I was pleased to attend at the Royal Canadian Legion branch number 31 to receive the first copy of the current year poppy campaign. That same day, Mr. Gibbon and I met over Zoom with the tourism-based communities, including Canmore and Banff, and on this occasion, we had invited guests, including mayors and CAOs of Drumheller and Sylvan Lake, who are interested in the initiative, and ministers in their ridings who might be also interested in the initiative. So those discussions and that initiative continues. On October 27, I was happy to join some other councillors and manager of our daycare facility, Lisa Daniels, for a tour of the Wildflowers Daycare with Minister of Children's Services, Minister Turton, who was in town for a conference at which Deputy Mayor also the Foster and Kinship Association. Mr. Gibbon and I used the opportunity to have breakfast the following morning with Minister Turton and had just an open discussion of a number of matters impacting Jasper, and I think it was very effective in just bringing awareness to another member of cabinet as to some of the challenges we face as a tourism-based community, including childcare and the impact that childcare has on our business sector. October 30th, I attended the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority Board meeting, where Director Greathead made a presentation with respect to prospect of regional composting, which has been adopted and will carry on at a regional level through West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management. As with, I think, everyone in the room, attended the media training Tuesday last week, the blanket exercise Friday last week, and earlier today, no stone left alone with Councillors Demota, Councillor Laxer, and Councillor Mellon. And that completes my report. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'm realizing this to me last week, so there was things I actually did leading into it. On the 26th of October, I was honored to welcome the Kinship Care and Foster Care Society to Jasper for their annual It's All About the Kids conference. It's a wonderful group of people. It was my second year in that role, and they all remembered me, and they're lovely. It was really great. The 31st, yeah, I attended the media training with Grant Ainsley, which was very entertaining and extremely informative. And on the 3rd, I was also at the Indigenous training and the blanket exercise, which was beautiful and very impactful. And I just wanted to thank Project Coordinator Jen McGrath for all of her hard work with Indigenous people in our area.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would say that I am thankful and grateful that we had the opportunity for the media training and also the Indigenous cultural training and blanket exercise. So they're both well executed training events for not only council but also directors and management. On November 3rd, I had an emergency museum board meeting. And tonight I have a bit of a training session ongoing with board training for Community Futures West Yellowhead.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. If there are no, go ahead, Councillor Demota.
Well, just because it's the first time in a regular meeting, that I could speak to this. On October 20th and 21st, along with Councillor Hall at the time, I attended on your behalf to the Civic Nation elopement, which is a gathering at 6 Bridge area, and it was a very rewarding experience. Interacted quite a bit with the people that were gathered there, but it was to signify an agreement that the nation signed with the BC government for extension of child protective services outside of reservation to make it basic, so that there's an extended service for children away from home, as they quote it, because it is their home. And so expanding on that, the understanding it is in a different province, but the territory originally didn't have that boundary. So the gathering place for us and people were in Jasper, and it was a very nice ceremony to be part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. I will assume that completes agenda item 8, agenda item 9, upcoming events. There is a list of upcoming events there. I would add to it for those who are interested, those who might have uncles who are interested, and others who are simply seniors like me, that tomorrow is the annual seniors fall dinner at the multi-purpose hall, commencing at 5 o'clock. You would be welcome. Are there any other upcoming events which the council wishes to bring to the attention of all of council? If not, we have an in-camera item to deal with. I can say with some confidence that when we emerge from that in-camera session, there will be no further public issues to discuss, and we will simply adjourn. So I will thank all of those who have been watching on the Zoom platform, and I credit Mr. Troy Mills, recently installed president of the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce, for your endurance throughout the day to join us for the whole meeting in person. We thank that and look forward to seeing you here when you're able to do that. Thank you for attending. And thank you all. I will call for a motion to move in camera at 4:07 p.m. And as I say, when we revert to open meeting, it will simply be for adjournment. I have that motion to move in camera from Deputy Mayor Hall. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, and we will move in camera.